Stories found between midnight and morning. Archive 006. We went inside anyway. Status: unresolved. Recovered 2:18 a.m. Source: recovered personal devices, survivor statement, verified. Location: St. Darius Medical Center, condemned.
This file was reconstructed from multiple recovered recording devices. Cross-reference includes a single surviving witness statement. 5 individuals entered the structure. Only 1 exited.
St. Darius Medical Center had only been closed for 3 weeks. That alone made it unusual. Most abandoned places take time to decay. Time for dust to settle. Time for damage to spread. Time for evidence of neglect to become obvious. This place hadn't had that time. The warning signs were still clean, bright, recently placed. The edges sharp, the lettering clear. Not faded, not ignored. They were installed with intent. The message wasn't for the past. It was for anyone arriving now. The main entrance had been sealed with a heavy chain, industrial grade, pulled tight through both handles, secured with a lock that hadn't seen weather yet. No rust, no wear, no reason to believe it had been there long. There were 5 of them, urban explorers, not amateurs, not reckless in the way people assume. They had done this before, structures like this. Hospitals, factories, old transit buildings left behind and hollowed out over time. They knew what abandoned looked like. They knew what empty felt like. And this wasn't either of those things. When the front doors didn't open, they didn't hesitate. They adjusted, moved along the side of the building, scanning for another entry point. That part was routine, expected. They found a service entrance partially boarded shut. The wood wasn't intact. Not completely broken, but not secure either. The boards bowed slightly outward, like pressure had been applied from the inside. Tested, or resisted. They didn't question it long. They rarely did. The first board came loose with effort. The sound it made carried farther than it should have. Not just louder, deeper. As if the building itself had space behind it that wasn't immediately visible. That should have been enough. It wasn't. They kept going. The remaining boards came free faster, each one giving way with less resistance than expected. Within seconds, there was a gap large enough to enter. No one suggested turning back. No one hesitated. Inside, there was no light. Not darkness in the usual sense, not something gradual or soft. It was flat, still, unresponsive. When they turned on their flashlights, the beams didn't fill the space. They didn't push the darkness back. They only carved narrow paths through it. And just inside the doorway, the floor was clean. Not partially cleared, not recently disturbed. Clean. No debris, no dust, no footprints. Nothing that matched the condition of other buildings they had explored. This one looked like it was still in operation. They noticed. All of them did. But recognition isn't the same as understanding. And understanding isn't required to move forward. So they explained it away. Recently closed. Sealed environment. Airflow differences. Anything that made it make sense. Because that's what you do in places like this. You normalize the wrong details. You convince yourself there's a reason. You keep going. They stepped inside. Together. Flashlights sweeping across walls that should have felt abandoned, but didn't. The air didn't move. The sound didn't carry the way it should have. Even their footsteps felt contained, muted in a way that didn't match the space. They paused just inside the corridor. Not long, just enough to establish control, to confirm what they already believed. They counted themselves. 5. Each voice clear, each person accounted for. No delay, no confusion, no hesitation. At that moment, everything was still intact. Every member of the group, every assumption they had made, every expectation they carried in with them. They believed they understood the space. They believed they were alone.
They were not. No immediate anomalies were reported at the time of entry.
At first, the interior matched expectations. The hallway stretched forward under ordinary ceiling panels and pristine paint. No broken or missing tiles. Equipment had been left behind as if they were returning to work tomorrow. A gurney, an IV stand, no debris scattered anywhere. It didn't look abandoned. It looked empty. That mattered, because it gave them something familiar to hold onto. They moved slowly at first, adjusting to the space. Flashlights sweeping across walls, across doorways, across the floor ahead of them. The beams cut through the darkness, but only in narrow paths. Everything beyond those paths remained untouched, contained. Their footsteps echoed, but not correctly, not with the delay or distance the hallway suggested. The sound returned too quickly, flattened, as if the space wasn't as deep as it appeared. No one said anything. Not yet. They continued forward. That's when they reached the first section that didn't match. A stretch of hallway, 10, maybe 15 feet, where the floor was not as clean. Not dirty, less clean. The walls showed the same pattern, the beginnings of aging, cracking, peeling, then gradually more so. Not repaired, not maintained, just unaffected. They noticed. They slowed down. Someone said something about airflow. Another mentioned sealed sections of the building. The explanations came quickly, overlapping, filling the space where doubt might have taken hold. No one stepped back. No one suggested leaving. They crossed it. And as they did, the overhead light flickered. Once, then again. A sharp, inconsistent pulse of light that illuminated the hallway for a fraction of a second longer than it should have. There should not have been power. Not in a building that had been shut down. Not in a structure that had been sealed. The light went out again. The darkness returned to its original state. Flat. Still. Unchanged. They kept moving. A door ahead stood partially open, just enough to reveal darkness inside. That was normal. Abandoned buildings don't stay closed. Air shifts, structures settle, doors move over time. They approached it, pushed it open the rest of the way. The room inside matched this part of the building. Dust-covered floor, empty bed frame, walls stripped of anything useful long ago. Nothing moved. Nothing reacted. Nothing suggested anything was wrong. That was enough. They stepped back into the hallway and paused. The door behind them had changed. Not closed, not open, just different. Slightly closer to the frame than before, at an angle that didn't match how it had been left. No one touched it. No one claimed to. But it wasn't the same. That was the first moment something didn't hold. Not visibly, not definitively, but enough to register. A sound followed. a door closing somewhere deeper inside the building. Heavy, solid, the kind of sound that travels. Except this one didn't travel correctly. It felt distant and immediate, as if it had happened far away and directly behind them. They stopped, listened, waited for something else. Nothing came. No footsteps, no movement, no confirmation. Just the absence of sound returning. They moved again. Slower now, more deliberate. The hallway ahead seemed longer than it should have been. The spacing between doors felt inconsistent. The distance between their steps and the walls didn't align. Nothing obvious, nothing measurable, just enough to feel it. That was when one of them hesitated, not fully stopping, just enough to look longer than before, at the far end of the hallway, at something that didn't move, until it did. A shift, a shape adjusting in the dark, gone the moment the light settled on it. Nothing there, nothing to confirm, nothing to prove. They didn't speak about it, not clearly, not directly, but they felt it. And once that feeling was there, it didn't leave. That was the last moment everything stayed together, before the first one disappeared.
The first disappearance occurs approximately 11 minutes after entry.
They stayed together, closer now than before. The space had already begun to shift around them. Subtle, inconsistent, just enough to keep them moving, but not enough to justify leaving. That balance helped them there. They spoke less. When they did, it was quieter, shorter, focused on what was directly in front of them. Anything beyond that wasn't addressed. Ahead, another door. Closed this time. No window, no markings. Just a standard patient room. One of them, Evan, stepped forward first. Not out of curiosity, out of routine. Check the room, clear the space, keep moving. That's how they had always done it. He reached for the handle, paused, then opened it. The door swung inward without resistance. The room beyond was dark, flat like the hallway. He stepped inside, half a step at first, then fully. The others remained just outside the doorway, watching, waiting. "Anything?" someone asked. No response. They assumed he was looking, turning, scanning the corners the way they all did. Another second passed, then another. "Evan?" Still nothing. One of them leaned forward slightly, angling their light into the room. The beam cut across the floor, across the walls, across empty space. No movement, no obstruction, no indication that anyone was inside. They stepped in, one at a time. Not rushing, not panicked, not yet. The room was empty, completely. No second exit, no window, nothing. Nothing that could explain his absence. They checked behind the door, corners, along the walls, the bathroom, anywhere a person could hide. There was nowhere to hide. Evan? The name sounded different now. Not a call, a test. They stepped back into the hallway, looked both directions. No movement, no sound, no sign that anyone had passed them. They counted again. 4. The number held. They tried to reconstruct it. Maybe he slipped past. Maybe they missed it. Maybe he doubled back. None of it worked. There wasn't enough time. There wasn't enough space. There wasn't enough of anything to make it possible. They went back into the room, checked again, slower this time, more deliberate, as if something might appear if they gave it enough time. Nothing did. No sound, no shift in the air, no trace that he had ever been there. That was when the structure of the group broke. Not outwardly, not in panic, but in understanding. Something had happened, something they couldn't explain. And whatever it was, it hadn't made a mistake. They stepped back into the hallway. 4 of them now. They discussed his disappearance and came to no conclusions. Standing in a space that no longer followed the rules they understood. No one suggested leaving. Not yet. Because leaving meant accepting what had just happened. And none of them were ready to do that. So they stayed. And the building stayed with them.
The second disappearance occurs after the environmental shift. The degradation becomes progressively more apparent.
By the time they left the room where Evan disappeared, the hallway was no longer the same. Not dramatically, not all at once, but enough. The floor that had been clean at entry now showed a thin layer of dust. Not evenly spread, not settled naturally, just there. The walls looked older, not damaged, aged. Like time had passed differently inside that space. They didn't say it, not clearly, but they slowed down. 4 of them now, and no one wanted to be the next one separated from the group. They stayed close, closer than before, close enough that their lights overlapped, close enough that they could hear each other breathe. That mattered. Because the building didn't sound the same anymore. Their footsteps didn't echo. They didn't carry. They stopped at the walls, as if the space had grown smaller around them. They reached an intersection. It hadn't been there before. At least, no one remembered it being there. 3 directions, all of them dark, all of them the same. One of them chose. No discussion, no vote, just movement. The others followed, because stopping felt worse. The further they went, the more the building changed. The ceiling sagged slightly. The paint peeled in longer strips. The air felt heavier, harder to move through, like something was pressing inward. That was when they heard it. Footsteps behind them. Not echoes, not reflections. Separate, distinct, out of rhythm. They stopped. The sound stopped with them. They turned. Nothing. The hallway behind them stretched back into darkness. No movement, no shape, no explanation. They stood there longer than they should have, waiting for something to confirm what they had heard. Nothing did. So they turned back and kept moving. That was when the second one disappeared. Not all at once, not like Evan. Slower. One of them, Jordan, was walking at the back of the group. Close enough to see, close enough to hear. They had just turned a corner, all 4 still there. Then, 3. No sound, no warning, No movement forward or back, just absence. They didn't notice immediately. That's what made it worse. They kept walking, still talking, still moving like nothing had changed, until someone responded to a voice that wasn't answered. They turned, counted. 3. The space behind them was empty. No doorway, no room, no place to step into. Just a straight hallway. Long, unbroken. There was nowhere to go, nowhere to hide, nowhere to disappear into. They went back, faster this time, lights shaking, breathing uneven, calling his name. Nothing answered. No sound, no movement, no trace. The hallway looked older than it had moments before, darker, more worn, like it had been left that way for years. They stopped again. 3 of them now, standing in a place that no longer followed any pattern they could understand. That was when they realized they weren't moving through the building. The building was changing around them.
Subject separation occurs prior to recovery. The remaining footage is fragmented.
By the time he was alone, the building no longer resembled what they had entered. The walls were darker now, not just aged, rotted in places. Paint hung in long, curling strips. Sections of the ceiling had begun to give way, exposing rusted framework above. The floor was no longer clean. Dust had settled thick across it, disturbed only by his own movement. It didn't make sense. None of it did. Minutes ago, less than that, the space had been intact, stable, recently closed. Now it looked abandoned for decades. He moved quickly, not running, not yet, but faster than before. Every step deliberate, every turn immediate. No more hesitation at doors, no more checking rooms. That had stopped mattering. The only thing that mattered now was getting out. He called out for the others, names repeated, louder each time. The sound didn't carry, it didn't echo. It felt absorbed, like the building wasn't letting anything travel. That was when the noises started again. Footsteps, not his, behind him, then beside him, then somewhere ahead. He stopped. The footsteps stopped. He moved again. They followed. Not matching him, not chasing him, just present, keeping pace. That was when he started to run. The hallway didn't stay consistent. It shifted. Not visibly, not like walls moving or doors appearing, but the distance changed. Turns came sooner than expected, then later, then not at all. He passed the same intersection twice. He was sure of it. 3 directions, same damage, same pattern in the wall. It didn't matter which way he chose. He was still inside, still moving, still not getting closer to anything. His light began to flicker, not from power loss, from instability. The beam stretched unevenly, cutting across surfaces that didn't reflect it the same way twice. That was when he saw it. An exit sign, faint, green, mounted above a door at the far end of the hall. It hadn't been there before. He would have seen it. He knew he would have. But it was there now, clear, unmistakable. He didn't question it. He moved toward it. Faster now. The footsteps followed, closer this time, still out of sync, still not matching. The door beneath the sign was slightly open. Light, real light, spilled through the gap. Not a flashlight, not flicker.
the faint light of streetlights. He reached it, pushed it open, and stepped through. The air changed immediately. Cold, clean, normal. The structure behind him, gone. Not physically, but everything about it shifted the moment he crossed the threshold. He stumbled forward into the open. Concrete, parking lot. The outside of the building exactly as it had been when they arrived. No decay, no damage beyond what had already been visible. No indication of what was inside. He turned back. The door behind him was closed. No light beneath it. No sound. Nothing. His phone buzzed. Signal. Full bars. That wasn't possible. There was no signal inside, not anywhere near that structure. He didn't question it. He called 911, tried to explain, failed, started over. Gave the address, said how many had gone in, said how many didn't come out. They told him to stay where he was. He didn't argue, didn't move, didn't look away from the building. Waiting, listening, watching the entrance, expecting something to follow him out. Nothing did. But for a moment, just once, he thought he saw movement behind one of the upper windows. Something standing there, still, watching him back.
Local authorities were dispatched following an emergency call placed by the surviving individual. Time of arrival, 2:11 a.m.
They reached the location within minutes. 2 patrol units. Standard response. No indication at that point that anything unusual had occurred beyond a possible trespassing or injury. The survivor was waiting outside, exactly where he said he would be. Alone. Coherent enough to respond, not coherent enough to explain. He repeated the same details. 5 entered. Only 1 came out. The others, gone. He pointed to the entrance he had used, described the interior, the condition, the layout, the changes. Most of it didn't translate. Not clearly. Not in a way that could be verified from where they stood. The building, from the outside, appeared exactly as expected. Recently condemned, secured, undisturbed. No visible signs of structural collapse. No indication of long-term decay. No reason to assume anything inside matched what he described. They entered anyway. Standard procedure. 2 officers through the main entrance after removing the chain. 1 remained outside with the survivor. Body cameras active. Flashlights on. The interior did not match the report. The floors were intact. No dust present. No debris. No advanced decay. No structural damage beyond what would be expected from a recent closure. The hallway extended normally. No distortion. No irregular spacing. No visible inconsistencies. They proceeded methodically, room by room, floor by floor, announcing themselves, listening, waiting for response. None came. No movement. No voices. No signs of recent activity beyond what they had brought in with them. But they did find something. Devices. A phone. Then another. A camera. Placed in areas that didn't suggest they had been dropped. Left behind. Collected. Documented. Bagged. No damage. No indication of struggle. No indication of impact. No indication that anyone had been there long enough to leave them by accident. They completed the sweep. All accessible areas cleared. No bodies. No injuries. No additional individuals located. 5 entered. 1 recovered. 4 unaccounted for. The building did not provide an explanation.
Recovered devices were transferred for analysis. Data extraction confirmed partial continuity between recordings. Visual inconsistencies were noted.
The footage did not match the building. Not as it was found. Not as it was recorded by responding officers. Not as it existed in any official documentation. In the recovered files, the interior was different, older, degraded, changing, progressively, frame by frame, segment by segment, as if time had been applied unevenly or incorrectly. In multiple recordings, the group appears intact. 5 individuals, moving together, consistently accounted for, until they aren't. The moments of disappearance are present, clear, unobstructed, unexplained. There are no visual interruptions, no camera failures, no environmental interference. One moment, 5. The next, 4. Then 3. Then 1.
Final review identified an additional detail, not noted by responding officers.
In several segments, across multiple devices, a 6th individual remains visible after the first disappearance, positioned behind the group, out of alignment, not interacting, not acknowledged, never fully visible, never fully absent, present in every frame.
Subject did not report a 6th individual beyond the original group. Review indicates an additional presence.
The final recovered image, taken seconds before the surviving subject exits the structure, shows the corridor behind him. Empty, except for one figure standing at a distance, still, centered in the frame.
4 individuals remain unaccounted for. A final warning. This incident remains unresolved. Do not attempt to enter restricted structures. Report any similar activity.
And our thanks to the Office of Anomalous Records for their cooperation in releasing this case. End of record status. Unresolved. Archive.